Okay, guys, welcome to the young. This is not young. This is leadership. We help you develop yourself and bring experienced leaders from different fields of life to speak on topics that contribute to your personal development. So today we're having Mr. Maxwell, and he'll be speaking on Africa, the future workforce. Good. So, Mr. Maxwell, the floor is yours. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Sir Michael. Miracle. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be here and talk about what I love the most, that is the African workforce. So I'll do a brief introduction. I'm Maxwell Gad. I'm from Kenya. I serve as a Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship Development to B&B Global Investment. And what we are trying to do is to empower the entrepreneurs with the capacity and similarly the resources needed for them to actually build their dreams and their passions. So that's a brief about me. I don't know if I can get into now the topic. Okay, so talking about Africa workforce, it's something interesting, something captivating. And I know that if you've been very keen online, or rather if you've been into the social media platforms, let's say LinkedIn, Twitter, you've seen everybody actually talking about the future of Africa, right? Because we've drawn attention. And one of the reasons why we've drawn attention is because of the increase in population that will actually affect the workforce. And when you study the curves, let's talk about comparing China, comparing India, and now then coming down to Africa. You realize that the curves for China and India, which have been the superior workforce for the past 2 decades or so, are either flattening and soon they will be dropping. And in some countries, such as USA, you see that the curve is starting to drop with regards to workforce. But interestingly, our continent's curve, when it comes to population and workforce, is steadily increasing. And there's something really captivating because now, when we talk about workforce and you relate it to the population, you realize that Africa, we are a very young continent. Our median age is at 19.7 years. That means the continent is very young. We are very young, and therefore I believe this is a gift that we can actually use very well to build ourselves, or rather build the future. And even to go deep into numbers, we talk about now Nigeria. Nigeria is averagely 203 million people currently, averagely, right? And then we have countries such as DRC Congo, which is currently at 132 million averagely, similarly to Ethiopia. But now, when you look at the future of these countries, when it comes to, let's say, in the next 70 plus years, you realize that Nigeria will be at around 478 million, and it will be ranked as the fourth largest country in the world. And following up, we'll have DRC Congo, which will be at 431 million. And then lastly, we'll have now Ethiopia will coming in at the seventh position globally at 367 million when it comes to population. And then it brings for us a challenge that now we have a large number of people, and similarly we have a young continent, a growing population of young people who are actually annually are getting into the markets. So let's look at now when it comes to now the workforce generally. We find that Africa creates an average of 3 million jobs annually, right? But the workforce, young people who get on board into the workforce annually is about 10 to 12 million. So we have a deficit of 9 to around 9 no around 7 to 9 million of people who lack jobs yearly, annually. And the trend continues over and over again. And so the big question is now, how do we leverage on the gift of the workforce? Because now we have the high number of people getting to job markets, but no jobs, right? So it's an interesting question. It's an interesting thing for us, and it's past something special for us as Africans to actually we need to really work on something. And therefore, what I feel like we can do as individuals, as a continent, is that we can strive to work on job creation. We can strive to do this by actually minimizing, or rather focusing on two things. We can focus on education and skill development. Education and skill development. Because again, these are the platforms that we have that will really enhance our capacity towards actually accepting and absorbing the reality that we are the future workforce, right? Because now we see, when you look at India or China, you will realize that there's a point in time when you would apply for every four people who will apply for a job, will get two Indians, or two Indians everywhere. Whether you're in Kenya, whether you're in Nigeria, USA, you will get at least an Indian or two out of four people. And now we as Africans, we are getting to that stage. Then unless otherwise we prepare ourselves skillfully, skill-wise, and similarly we build on our capacity, then we will miss the gift of the workforce. And we see this literally, the aspect of now the larger population growth, and similarly we see the aspect of the workforce development going to affect Africa, and similarly it's going to affect the global nations. It's going to affect the globe, and we see that we have things such as now the consumer market. Slowly by slowly, we are starting to see companies starting to register in our continent, because here's where we are having the consumer market, right? We are seeing future workforce. We've talked about this. We see Nigeria has a large number of software developers, right? Soon, and we in the next 10 years, according to a document by Bridgewater, it says that we will be ahead of China, and it will, and probably India, and we will be there. Out of every four applications which will be done in the next 10 years, we will have an African, whether you're in Saudi Arabia, whether you are in USA, Canada, in Africa, you'll always have to get an African as an applicant for the job. So we have to actually start accepting this reality and actually working on it. So unless otherwise, we can either have this as a gift or similarly have this as a threat. What do I mean? We can leverage on actually developing leverage on actually working on as a gift. What do I mean as a gift? If I sharpen people, if I sharpen our lead, if I sharpen our ecosystems, then we are able to attract the right markets, right? Because again, when we look at even how the investors are putting their investments in the continent, we analyze and we realize that they are very strategic to place where their ecosystems are built. So unless we further this development as a continent, we are going to miss the beauty of the workforce, right? We're going to miss it. Let me give an example. When we talk about investments disbursement, which was done last year now in 2023, we realized that countries such as Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt were the larger countries which got the investments, because their countries have ecosystems that supports this, and they are building the workforce. We've seen, me currently being in Kenya, I've seen currently our government actually putting up innovation hubs, innovation centers, and I believe Nigeria is also doing the same. So unless the African continent pull as a unit to actually build capacity development areas, then we are going to actually miss on the gift of workforce. And then what happens if we don't utilize this gift of workforce? Number one thing which I believe in, we are going to have the increased poverty. We're already poor, but again, we still want to be poor. That's very sad, right? we are already poor, right? Then how do we want to be poor? Yet we have this beauty of workforce. We can leverage on this workforce. We can tap into the potential of currently. There's one thing that I love about the world, that technology is there to connect us globally. Kenya might not be producing enough jobs for the Kenyan citizens, similar to Nigeria, but we've seen that the qualified citizens or the qualified Africans have managed to actually secure jobs outside even the continent. Some traveling abroad, and some even doing the remote work. So unless we actually do that, then we're not going to create jobs. So if we don't utilize the gift of workforce, we're going to have increased poverty. right? We're going to have constraint when it comes to our resources. What do I mean? When I saw some scenario in Kenya where we had hospital beds, the number of patients are too large such that they cannot be accommodated by the provided hospital beds. How? That is very sad. So unless we actually utilize on building the ecosystems that will support the workforce, and the ecosystems actually cut across four areas. We have education, we have the healthcare, and similarly we have food production, because we have to feed ourselves. We have to feed ourselves, and it's already sad that we are still importing a lot of food from outside, and we still expect our population to grow more. So we have to facilitate the food production in our continent to support the workforce. So we have to support the workforce in terms of capacity, in terms of health, in terms of education capacity, in terms of health, and similarly we have to support them in terms of food production, because they have to eat, right? They have to be fit. Similarly, they have to have the capacity to actually deliver according to the global standards when it comes to actually doing the workforce stuff. So my parting shot will be that we can advise, or rather, we as ourselves Africans up, right? Because again, sometimes we get the notion that the government has to do everything. It's okay, the government has to play its part. But similarly, I believe, currently, me myself, I believe in the partnership between government and the private entities towards actually coming together and building infrastructures that can be able to actually develop Africa as a continent. So we can encourage investors as well, that investors, when you come to Africa, you can't just come and start putting investments in software for healthcare when you don't have health infrastructure. You can't come and put software in education when we don't have schools, right? Then how will those softwares be supported if the basic standard of what we need is actually coming from the infrastructural roots of things? So we have to build the roots. We have to build the basic structures first. And I believe, and I usually tell myself that we may not do this today. We might not do this tomorrow. We might not do this in the next 1 month. We might not do this in the next 10 years. But I believe that if we start taking initiatives right now, we are certainly going to be somewhere tomorrow. I don't know when tomorrow will be, but it's actually very bright, only if we decide to take those steps. So we can encourage that to also happen. And similarly, one of the things also I'd love to encourage our government is to support the informal sector places, because those are the current job creators. What I mean is the SMEs. We've seen a number. So out of this 9 to 10 million unemployed people, most of them fall back to SMEs. They all go back to starting their small businesses. And generally speaking, my engagement with SMEs world, I feel like still a lot to be done, because we have to recognize first that SMEs are the backbone of our continent. Most of the revenue the countries generate comes from SMEs. Yet SMEs receive minimal support compared to currently we have startups. Startups are getting a lot of money. But now when we go back to SMEs, they lack fundings, they lack capacity, they lack the mentality to actually see tomorrow. What I mean by the statement is, an SME provider gets to a market to actually get a today's meal. I only want to survive for today. I don't care about tomorrow. So unless otherwise we get a support system to actually support the informal sectors in terms of providing resources, in terms of providing capacity, I think also we're going to have a lot of struggle. Putting this in mind that the 9 to 10 million people who don't get jobs, they all get back to the informal sector employment to actually sustain their livings. So that's what I can say about the African workforce. We are the future workforce, but unless otherwise we utilize, or rather, unless otherwise we start by realizing the potential that we have towards transforming the global economy, then we're going to do nothing. So we start by acknowledging that fact. Number two, we go to taking action. Then we remain consistent in doing so. So that's what I can say about the African workforce. We are a youthful nation where we have a lot of entrepreneurs currently getting the space, And we are getting a lot of innovations coming here to help us solve the needs of what we have as a continent. So we have to figure out an ecosystem, a sustainable ecosystem, which will actually package all these people. Do you need resources? Here, here's the resources. I need capacity. Here's the capacity. So if we can work with these ecosystem enablers and similar ecosystem drivers, we can pull everybody to the same ground and actually build a sustainable ecosystem that will attract the investments that we need to actually build the African continent. So that's what we have for the African workforce, and I believe we are the future. That's what I can say about it.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Maxwell. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so my voice is echoing. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know why. Do you hear it echoing?
Not really.
Okay, let me see. Let me see. Okay. This is better.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So thank you so much.
Okay,
good. So thank you so much, Mr. Maxwell. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So
the reason Africa is experiencing. Let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. So Africa is experiencing a wave of immigration. Now, a lot of young people are leaving the continent as a result of the fact that they're not conducive environment for young people to thrive. So now let's be very realistic here. How do you think we would address the issue of young people not seen open Africa? How do you think we can actually address that?
Hope in Africa, I think it starts from the mentality, because we all want to move to the Silicon Valley. We all want to go to San Francisco. We all want to move there to build like how Elon Musk did, because there was already a sustainable ecosystem where they have the capacity, they have the resources needed to actually build. So it's easier to build in Silicon Valley than to build in Africa. But in doing so, we forget that at some point, Silicon Valley was also built, right? It was also built. And it was built by the people who are inhibiting it. And actually, they're doing us a favor by extending their hands to welcome us to Silicon Valley to actually also build with them. But unless otherwise we realize that Africa will be built by Africans, I know there are a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges. But if Africa decides to wake up and start building its ecosystem, then I think we're going to build a great place. So we have to debunk the theory. I know we love comfort. I also don't want to build in a place where the struggles. I understand that part. But we have to wake up and realize that nobody's coming to build Africa for us. We ourselves will have to build it. Silicon Valley was built by its people. So we can also decide from today and start building ecosystems for Africa. And soon, if we do that, we'll start also attracting people from Silicon Valley and welcome them to Africa. They can't be welcoming us every day. We can also invest that, right? But it starts from us acknowledging the fact that Silicon Valley was once built. It was not what it is today. For it to support the entrepreneurs, for it to support Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, somebody had to build it. So who is going to build Africa? It's us. So that's what I can say. And similarly, I can say something that Africa has a lot of challenges. And honestly speaking, with the rates of unemployment, we can leverage these challenges and employment and make employment for ourselves. That's how entrepreneurship works. We identify problems that we're already facing because nobody's going to come and solve them for us. We can convert this to opportunities for not only ourselves, but also to another community. So if we can also recognize or rather see challenges as an opportunity to actually build. I'm a Christian, and in one of our verses, we see Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, being directed to the wilderness. Wilderness is not a good place, but it was the will of the Father to direct him to the wilderness. So sometimes we have to be in that wilderness to actually get the meaning of life. So unless otherwise we want the soft spot, I don't see us getting it. And how I said it again, Africans will be built by Africans for Africans and similarly for everybody globally. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for that. Okay, so I think there's a problem right now in all of
in
Africa. And one of the problems we have in
And one of
Africa,
the problems we have in Africa is the fact
especially in West Africa,
especially in West Africa,
we see a lot of
I
people
see
really,
a lot of people really,
immigrate to live in the country
because
a lot of young people
a
think
lot
that
of
they
young
won't
people
leave.
think that
I read something one time
I
ago,
read
and
something
then
one
the
time
mindset,
ago,
it
and
says,
then the
I'm an
mindset
old
is
man, but you
I'm an
can leave
old
the
man, but
country,
you can leave the country,
outside of the country, and then
outside of the country, and then
need to come to pass.
need to come to pass.
Now, looking at the current challenges,
looking at the current
we have,
challenges we have,
do you think
do you
that
think
with the opportunities
that
we
with
have
the opportunities we have
do you
as
really
Africans,
believe
do you
that
really believe that
if Africans do not
if Africans
find
do not
a plan
find
B,
a
when I
plan
mean a
B,
plan B,
when I mean plan B,
that somewhere like
that
probably
somewhere like
traveling
probably
to another
traveling
continent
to another continent
to earn some money and then
earn
come back
some
to
money
create
and
an
then come back
opportunity
to
for
create an
Africans.
opportunity
Do
for
you
Africans.
think that it
You
is
think
wrong
that
that
it
for
is
Africans
wrong
to desire
that
to
for
want to
Africans to
go
desire
out
to
of
want to go
Africa
out of
to take
Africa
look for
take
resources to make
look for
build
resources to
Africa and
make
come back?
build Africa and
Because
come back? Because
if we want to say
if we want to
we want to say
say
that okay,
we want to say that
Africa is going to be great,
Africa is
and we're not getting
and
really
we're not
support
getting really
from our
support
leaders
from our leaders
and some even private
and
entities
some even
because
private
of lack
entities
of trust,
because of
a lack of
trust,
integrity
a
within
lack of
the young
integrity
people
within
today in West Africa and Africa and East Africa as a whole, and even in South Africa. Do you think it is right that young people should, find a greener pasture, and when they find a greener pasture, they take what it takes, they do what they have to do, and then come back and then make Africa work? Do you support that idea? Do you think that idea can really make Africa grow?
Basically, I'm not against Africans actually going outside there to make or to get to the greener pastures. That's what we all want to be in. I would love to be in greener pastures. I would love to be in a greener pasture. But now, the thing that comes with this, the realistic thing that comes with this, is that we have many people going, but when they go, they don't think about home, right? They don't think about home. And though I've seen a lot of recently, I've seen a reawakening where we've seen how do I put it? Africans in diaspora actually starting to actually fund some of the African projects. So it's a good thing because we actually need resources to actually build Africa. We won't build it by words. So if somebody has an opportunity to go outside there and bring in the resources that we need to build Africa, as something I'm already seeing with some of the VCs which are actually African based, we find Africans in diaspora actually going there, learning, and then coming back to actually build Africa. I'll give one example. We have Fred Swanika. Fred Swanika is this entrepreneur who started the school African Leadership University. And you realize that he went abroad, went and studied, got the resources he needed. Then he came back and brought in the African Leadership Academy, African Leadership University, the ALX program, currently has the Sandbox program. So it's a very good thing if we are mindful to actually go and come back rather than just going and forgetting about our home. So it's a really brilliant idea to actually do that. So I'm into the idea. But similarly, let not everybody actually have that mentality of actually going. We also need people in the ground who can actually also bear the pain and build from the ground. So we need the connection between people who get us the resources and actually the people who actually build. And people who build should have the mentality of building, not the mentality of traveling. Though everybody has the capacity and the opportunity and has the will to actually travel, but we also have to put in consideration how do we build on the ground as well.
So much. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me well?
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So
okay.
My question now is
this. Yeah.
What's your advice for young people? What's something you want young people should know in your experience so far, in your ability to see Africa's future, that the workforce is an opportunity that we have and as an advantage in Africa? What advice would you give to young person like you and me?
The one thing I will tell any young person outside there is to wake up, thank the source which gives life, build, and repeat. There's no room for stopping. We have to build. We have to have the discipline and the mindset of building. We don't need the motivation, we need the discipline. We can wake up and actually build. If we delay in building now, we are going to actually also delay the fruits harvesting time, right? We might be off season by the time when we start building. So one thing that I would advise the young people to actually wake up, acquire knowledge, build the skills, get the right networks, and build your dream. Everything is possible. You just have to build the mindset. So discipline, consistency, out improve every single day. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Mr.
so much,
Maxwell.
Mr. Maxwell.
So we're coming to the end of the section now, and my question is going to be this. My last question, basically, I'm going to put it this way. My last question is going to be, in your experience so far as a young person in this field and your advocacy for quality leadership in Africa and different areas of life, what's your idea? What's your definition of leadership? What would you say is the best definition that defines what leadership truly means and that can suit Africa as a whole?
Oh well, leadership is about service. It's serving the people. It's just about service. That's the root of leadership. You can't define anything about leadership apart from just serving. And that's now where we have problems. But again, it goes out of most of us define leadership as titles, amount of money somebody has, amount of resources, amount of connections. But the clear picture of leadership boils down to service. It's a responsibility that we have. It's a gift and responsibility that boils down to service. Yeah.
Mr. Maxwell, I'm really
Mr.
grateful
Maxwell,
for
I'm really grateful
your
for
time for this
your
section,
time for this
and
session.
we hope to have you
And
again.
to have you
We're going to be
again.
having Mr.
We're
Maxwell
going to be
in the
having
conference,
Maxwell in the conference,
which is West Africa Young
which is
Leaders
West Africa Young Leaders
Professional Leaders Conference 2024. So Mr. Maxwell will be one of our, our leaders that will be there. So I want you guys to watch out. And thank you so much, Mr. Maxwell, for accepting my invitation. Thank you so much for everyone who has joined. And we hope to see you guys once again for the conference and for upcoming sections we'll be having as well. So, Mr. Maxwell, do you have any final words for us before we let you go?
My final word would be that we can't rush art, we can't rush the beauty of building, but we have to recognize and appreciate the importance of making a daily step towards our goals. So that's why I'll get back to my words and say we might not be able to build everything today, we might not be able to build everything tomorrow, we might not be able to build everything this month or even in the next year or even in the decade. But the importance of the input that we are going to make every single day will one day count. And that's what I can say. Consistency, 1% better each day. And that can apply to everybody. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maxwell, and everyone for joining us. We're going to see you guys another time. And thanks again, once again, for joining. Mr. Maxwell, thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. Have a blessed evening.